Hello, hello. Can everyone hear me? Oh, I got everyone's attention. Good. Well, welcome everybody. I am Stephany Pedroza, Senior Marketing Manager and Capital Program Specialist at Aurigo Software Technology. And I hope everyone got a boost of energy seeing that we're the panel discussion right after lunch. So the pressure is real. Are you guys ready? Awesome. So a little bit about Aurigo Software. We are headquartered here in Austin, Texas, but we've been helping capital owners manage their infrastructure programs by providing an end-to-end solution that helps with all the complexities that come with capital planning and construction. And we've been doing this now for 20 years. And if you'd like to learn more about Aurigo, come see us outside. We'd love to say hi to you guys. Now I'm going to let our panel of experts introduce themselves. So we'll start with you.
Hello, my name is Andrew Miller. I'm a district manager for San Leon Municipal Utility District. It's a small utility district outside of Houston, Texas.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lauren King. I'm the supervising engineer for the CIP and Asset Management Group at Austin Water at the City of Austin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tamika Miles. I am one of two Tamikas that Infraday gets to have today on their panels from the City of San Antonio. I think I'm the only fiscal person here as well, so yay me. I am the Fiscal Operations Administrator for the City of San Antonio. I lead all of the DFAs, which are the Department Fiscal Administrators, and there's one in every department in the City of San Antonio.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Trimble. I'm the director of the City of Austin's Corridor Program Office. We manage large mobility transportation capital improvement programs doing multimodal improvements on our major roadways here in Austin, also working with TxDOT on the I-35 project as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We definitely have a great line of panelists. And I'm excited to get this discussion started because we're going to be discussing an issue that a lot of agencies are facing, but also that we hear a lot of our customers face, which is how to find the right time and resources to complete your capital programs efficiently. As we all know, just capital program delivery is quite difficult, where you have to figure out what resources you need. Where are you going to get those resources from? Where is the budget going to come from? And then also hiring those resources and hiring that talent. So we definitely have a lot to uncover. So I'm really excited to get started. And the first question that I have that I'm going to share with my panelists is, what are some planning constraints that your agency is facing when completing your capital programs? And I'll start with you, Mike. So if you want to start us off.
Sure. So I'm going to approach this from more of a portfolio management, program management perspective. So my office was created after the City of Austin passed a large transportation bond at that time, $720 million. And so it was inherent in that program that we weren't going to have enough money to get the work done. A lot of the work we're doing on the corridors were based on preliminary engineering studies. And there was about $1.5 billion worth of recommendations coming out of those studies. And we got about $500 million out of the bond. So right out of the gates, we knew we did not have enough funding. But our council asked us to come back with a prioritized program that sought to really positively impact and support several mobility outcomes, transportation outcomes like level of service and those other measures that you know well, but then also support community outcomes like affordability and preservation of local businesses and creating complete communities. So what we did is we put together a prioritization model to do just that. We ran a lot of investment packages through this prioritization model and really did our best to show that we were going to get the best bang for the buck with this mix of projects that we prioritized based on what council and our community wanted to achieve. And so with that limited funding, I would say from a programmatic perspective, if you have the ability and flexibility with a set of projects that you can work with, prioritizing those to make sure you are achieving the outcomes that your leadership wants to achieve and your community wants to achieve is really important. Having a good empirical way to do that right out of the gates is really important. That also allows you some flexibility when you don't have enough money. Even that $500 million isn't going to go as far as you thought it would. You have that prioritized list to go back to, and that line may move on what you actually get done, but you have that list to go back to. You can always refresh that, and that gives you that dynamic flexibility and the ability to be nimble to get a program like that done.
And Tamika, if you'd like to share some planning constraints that your agency is seeing.
So my background is really strategy and planning. Like, that's what I do. I just happen to be really good with numbers. And so I think for me, what I found has been culture and mindset. So the idea that that's the way we've always done it is an issue, like a big thing that blocks just about everything. And so what I do is I try to work with my team to help them think freely and be open to the idea that you can be right and left brain at the same time, right? And you can think outside of the box. You don't have to just think of it as numbers, but think of another way that you can flow through whatever the constraint is. So for me, yeah, it's a mindset and a cultural shock type thing, yeah.
Lauren.
All right. So Austin Water maintains infrastructure, and then we also have to support growth and enhancement projects. The city of Austin's growing a lot right now, and so we have a lot of growth projects. And so balancing those in our capital planning and budgeting has been, one of the main conversations that we're having as an organization. The idea of making sure that we're kind of keeping the lights on while also kind of doing these more aspirational and bigger projects that are going to support the size of the city that we are becoming. And we've really relied on data to try to support that. And so by using asset management data, collecting inventory and asset management, or condition data, prioritizing by risk, and so that we have like a dynamic ability to see where our issues are in the organization and to see if our capital plan is addressing that or if we're addressing that risk in another way. And so by kind of peeling back the layers of the onion and say, okay, like what are we really trying to accomplish here? Like we're trying to extend the life of our assets and replace those that are failing, right? So that we could keep the water flowing. Can we make sure that we're doing that while also doing these pretty big aspirational projects? We've got an aquifer storage and recovery project that's going to, be over $500 million. We have a, once in a generation wastewater expansion that we're also going to be programming in. So it's a lot of significant constraints, but want to make sure that the existing infrastructure is being supported while we're doing those things so that we don't neglect those. And so that's been one of the big kind of conversations that we've been having. And as we've watched our budget increase to accommodate these different things.
And Andrew, could you like to share constraints and how your agency is going about that?
Yeah, so constraints for us look a lot different from these guys. We've got a whopping 3,000 connections with 11,000 population, which that's probably a very small subdivision for these guys. But at the end of the day, capital improvement is the same across the board. What's in the ground needs to get maintained and needs to be upgraded over time. And so what we've really been dealing with is we're an in-house operations company. We have 13 employees to handle all of the operations that needs to happen. And most of those people have been there for 20 plus years. And so there's a lot of that. We've always done it this way, and it's, it is what it is. We had a ArcGIS system put in and nobody updated it because, well, we don't know how to do that. And so whenever I came on, one of the things that we've been working towards is adjusting the mentality, again, sort of like what everyone's been saying, of, we're not doing this because it's the right thing, even though it is the right thing. We're doing this to really set up the future generations who are going to be dealing with this infrastructure to have a better hand than what we were handed. Because ultimately, everything is going to decay, and we've got to make sure it's better for the next person than what it was whenever we came on board.
Okay. No, absolutely. And I think it's one of those, how are we going to get out of that mindset where it's like, we've done this for the last 20 years, but we also have to realize infrastructure is changing. We need to build it better. We need to build it stronger. It needs to be more resilient. So we have to be able to adapt to change. How are we going to adapt to change, which it's something that is always going to happen. Now, my next question is, how are you making better use of your internal talent and your internal resources so that they can focus more on project delivery? And Andrew, I'll start off with you.
Here, I thought I had more time to think. I was going to come on down. No, so again, getting back to the idea of, I've got a lot of our staff members that have been around for a while, trying to talk with them and explain that, we have some newer members that are coming on and they have a technological bent. And so let's try and utilize that. Let's take the institutional knowledge that we have from these people that have been here forever. I know one of the guys, I could call him at 2 a.m, say I'm at this intersection, where's the valve? And he could walk me to it probably in his sleep, right? You have those resources in your organization that really you just have to talk with them and explain and try and get them to understand that they're not sourcing themselves out of a job. They're really solidifying everything by translating that information that they have in their mind into a digital asset, into something that anyone can step up to and go, oh, okay, here's how I need to address this. So really, it's just talking with them and getting them there.
Okay. And Lauren, would you like to share how your
Sure.
agency's doing that?
We're for project teams, really focused on giving them more tools to be more accurate in their planning, to more readily anticipate risks to the project schedule, and build those in. When I started at the city, there was very little project management training and certainly no resources, and so doing things as simple as producing spending curves that are typical for a project to be used in planning and be like, this is how a typical project spends, and being able to put that into the budget, like very simple, but like a huge step forward for us in our ability to like kind of project what we're doing, and for managers to be able to manage workload between multiple project delivery teams. And so that's been a big thing. And then, we're continuing that process. We have a lot of course, internal processes around the financing of different projects and trying to streamline those down, get those review time shortened. We've gone to a lot of SharePoint forms to kind of manage those business processes, and, looking for further advancements as we get into Power BI and some of the more advanced business analytics. But with the budget that we're talking about and the projects that we're trying to deliver, like this is going to be a huge focus for us in the coming years of trying to make sure that we're enabling our project teams to deliver the projects that we need them to both maintain the infrastructure and deliver these larger projects. And so, more documentation, more training, better onboarding, better resource availability, getting away from the go talk to George because George knows how to fill out this form. Right? We lost Mary, who knew how to do the travel forms. It's been a real problem for us, and so we're trying to advance that. And, it takes time to automate these business processes that have been in existence for a long time, and you can't stop work to redo the business process. So it has to be all done kind of in stream. And so, you have to dedicate resources. Like my whole team is dedicated to doing that so that the project teams don't have to, right? And so the organization has to dedicate the resources to making those processes possible.
And Tamika.
Sure. So I'm in a very unique situation where I get to talk to every department within the city of San Antonio. And in doing that and having individuals who work and who have fiscal shared service teams that work in those departments, I'm able to hear a lot that I can filter. And so recently we're redoing our terminal at the airport. And when I came on board and we first started talking about it, and I've only been with the city for just over a year. We started talking about it. There was a conversation, but the conversation really wasn't talking about finance, right? And how do you do any capital project without finance, right? So I would interject. So how are we going to develop this financially? And it came back, well, Tamika, how are you going to solve that problem? So what I did is I looked at all of the DFAs that I currently had, and strategically, I selected 2 candidates who I thought would not only bring value on the finance side, but also bring value on the side of development, right? Be able to be there from the ground up and push forward. And so in doing that, they both interviewed for the position, and one was selected, and he has turned out to be a superstar, not just on the finance side, but on the operations side. And the benefit of that is he gets to see it from the ground up. So while he is the DFA, or the Department Fiscal Administrator for that capital project, he also has built rapport with everyone from the ground, the vendors who are coming on board. He knows the ins and outs of what's happening and why. And so that then transpires to, building a great department for him, right? He also is getting to select his team. So the accountants, the fiscal analysts, the management analysts, he gets to pick all of them from the ground up. He creates that team as this is being developed. So, and he gets to creatively collaborate with that entire department. And I think that's really important, not just on the fiscal side, but on the operational side too, that everyone is connecting the dots and we all understand what needs to happen. So we all can communicate what can happen, and you don't hear the no, we don't have any money for that.
Yeah, and I think communication is key. Being able to communicate with all of your constituents, everyone in your department is definitely key to getting those capital programs rolling. And Mike, I'll hand it over to you. How are you utilizing your internal resources more efficiently?
Yeah, I love this question. My office manages now today about a $3 billion portfolio of funded and unfunded projects. I have 17 full-time staff, city full-time staff. But on any given day, I have 80 to 90 full-time personnel working in the office. So what we've done is set up an integrated program management office. So we've taken basically a core set of a couple of city full-time staff that bring the institutional knowledge of how things work at the city. So city processes, who you go talk to. You're mentioning like you can go talk to Mary or go talk to George. We have people that know who to go talk to in the city to do that. And what we've done is built teams around them to integrate with them with consultant augmentation teams. So I have a utility coordination team, I have a permitting team, I have a real estate team, and they're all a communications team. They are all integrated city staff with consultant augmented teams. And we have learned how to work really well that way. And so what that also allows us to do is to be very nimble. So for example, as the programs have evolved over time, you go through program development, you get into early design, you get through design, you start to get into construction. We've been able to ramp up and ramp down certain teams depending on what the needs are. So for example, right now, our utility coordination team is ramped up right now because we're getting into later design on some of this initial quarter construction work that we're doing, but they'll eventually ramp down at a certain point. And we didn't really have much of a utility coordination team formed early in the program development. We were heavier on development engineers, design teams, and really having those beefed up. And so it allows us to kind of ramp up and ramp down. Same thing with our real estate team. As we get through our acquisition program, they're ramped up right now, but they will ramp down as we get through that. And then we'll start to ramp up on our construction services team as we start to move more into construction phase. And so we really like this model because it allows us to do a lot with a little. It takes a long time to hire full-time employees. Anybody work at a city or a local government? It takes a long time to hire staff, right? So with a consultant augmentation contract, if you get those services acquired and have the scope worked out correctly, you can get those services kind of brought to the table pretty quickly. And I definitely need to give a shout out to HDR, who is our quarter consultant team, who's been working with us side by side really over the last 6 to 8 years.
Awesome. So I'm going to actually go on to the next question, and I'm going to pick on you, Tamika, because this has to do with funds. How are you making use of your current funds? How are we maximizing the current funds that we have to complete those programs? Because right now we have a lot happening with inflation. We also have supply chain issues that are happening. Just every possible negative outcome that can come to complete these projects is being thrown our way. So how are we doing to maximize those funds?
So I would say the city of San Antonio is in a great place for this because I'm strategic, right? And the idea here is that you want to strategize. You want to really look at the entire picture. And like I said, I'm in a very good place for that because I get to see every department. I get to see where all funds are going. I get to understand what those funds are meant to do and what you would like them to do. And so I would say I kind of wrote this one out because I know I'm the only fiscal person up here. Like I said, be specific in your need, right, from the start. So know what it is, and then prioritize, but prioritize by hierarchy of purpose, right? So looking at what those funds are going to do, and how that affects the constituents, because ultimately, when you work for if you work for local government or federal government, that money is meant to help the citizens of your town, city, or municipality, right? And then create task force, right? So I think the common thing that I've heard today, moreover than anything else, is collaboration, right? If we don't collaborate, then we're not getting the full picture and something will be left out, right? And if there's limited resources, funds, and you leave something out, you can't go print more money. It doesn't grow on trees, believe it or not. And so we had, we have to be sure that we're getting all of that in. Be qualitative and quantitative in your ideas, right? And have measurable thought processes in regards to both. I think a lot of times we like to and I'm speaking from a finance side, we like to just look at numbers. Like, it is what it is. It's a number. That's all, black or white. But there are other things out there. For instance, air quality at the airport, like, that's important, right? And so when you're looking at hierarchy of purpose, maybe that's something we should put more money towards, right? So streamline all leadership approvals, thought processes, opinions, because that's a big hang up. Even on the finance side, it can be a hang up for someone to be able to get finance leadership to say, okay, yeah, let's go for that grant. Let's try and get, aid in this way. Let's streamline those that need for input, and then reevaluate frequently and schedule those reevaluations, right? Really look at what it is you're trying to accomplish over and over and over again. And I know that's redundant, but it's necessary, especially when you're thinking about money, right? Because mid-year comes, it passes, you miss your opportunity to put in any kind of amendment, any kind of adjustment. You wait to the end of the fiscal year, you think maybe it'll be in a budget, it's not there. And it's all because you didn't reevaluate on a regular basis. And then don't work in a vacuum. We're all trying to accomplish the same goal. I think, speaking from the finance side, and I have worked on the operational side, I think that there can be a disconnect because, like I said, a lot of finance people are just numbers. That's it. I don't care about any of the other stuff. This is what you got. This is what you can do that. But the more you engage them, because they're human beings, right? The more they'll understand what that need is, and the more they'll be able to help you look for funds. There may be someone who's very passionate about grants and can find grants that you had no idea about. Or maybe they have a connect at Texas Dot, maybe it's their cousin over there that they can have a conversation with, but you won't know that if you're working in a vacuum. So that's all I have for that.
Okay. Andrew, do you want to let us know how your agency's maximizing funds, since you're in a smaller, but it's still important?
Yeah, definitely. Funding is always an issue regardless of your size. And so, one of the things that we've been working towards, again, is utilizing the data we have and understanding that there's a lot that you can do through your operating budget, more than you think you can. The phrase I've got on my whiteboard, a bunch of phrases that I come back to time and time again, and one of them is, don't overestimate what you can do in a year, don't underestimate what you can do in 5. There's a lot that you can do if you chip away at it. And, like I said, we've got 60 miles of water line, we've got 50 miles of sewer line. That feels like a lot to me, but it's doable. You just need to chip away at it. And so what we've been doing is we've been pursuing grants, we've done bonds, we've done a lot of things traditionally, but we're also looking at what kind of things can we streamline in our operations that'll free up our guys to go lay 100 feet of new line over here, or dig out this line over here and put in a new line. So it's really just understanding what you're working with and having that actionable data to where you can start doing the little things that over 5 years turns into a big thing.
Great. And Mike, we all want to know what Austin is doing with our funds and how they're making better use of them.
Yeah, well, I will say we've been really fortunate that our community and our taxpayers have made a lot of investment into mobility infrastructure over the last several years. Many of you who are from here know that we also passed a tax rate election in 2020 for Project Connect, high capacity transit here. So huge investments being made, airport expansion project as well. So there are a couple things I'll say to that is that with limited resources, I think it's really important to work the whole program. And so again, I'm going to come at this from a program management perspective. I mentioned that we had a program of about 1.5 billion unfunded to start with, funded about 500 million. If you don't work that other 1 billion component of that program, it's hard to ever get to it. So what we did is we actually looked at opportunities to partner with private development to get contributions to some of these transportation improvements on the major corridors. We looked at grant funding. We looked at other funding opportunities, funding from our other departments. We've actually brought in millions of dollars in like landscape tree funding from our other departments, which has been amazing. A great team working on those types of things. We brought in about $10 million from private developer investment on our corridors. Overall, we brought in about $100 million of additional investment, and that wasn't to the funded. A lot of that goes to these projects that were the next in line, unfunded. Some of those projects were better candidates for grant funding. We've gotten a couple of state grant funding projects, and some of those were not on the top of the list, but they competed the best for some of these grant opportunities. So, one of my recommendations would be if you do have a list of projects and you only have so much funding, yes, absolutely, everything that my colleagues have said, you've got to, look for those funding sources, manage that well. But also don't forget about those unfunded projects too, because you don't want to lose any opportunities. And that's what I'll say is we would have missed a lot of opportunities to get a lot of the improvements we're getting in place if we didn't work the whole program. And so that's our whole approach is we work the entire program, and then that provides us the additional opportunities. Get the funded work done, but then see what other improvements you can bring in, tee up projects for full design, seeking construction funding. That's how you get grant funding. Right now, that bipartisan infrastructure law, a lot of funding in place, but they're looking for projects that are ready to go. A lot of conversations I've been having with FHWA and my colleagues, with FTA and others, they're looking for those shovel-ready projects, right? They're looking for what can you start getting on the ground, because they want to spend their money as fast as you want to spend your money. So that puts you in a good position for that. So again, biggest thing I would say, just work the whole program, all the different types of strategies to manage the funding you have, but then look for additional funding as well.
And Lauren, we want to know what's happening with the water department on your end.
The jumping around has been real fun. We are funded by rates, like you pay for your water and your wastewater fees. That's what funds Austin Water. And so we are actually in a more stable financial situation than a lot of different entities, and that's nice. I'm not going to lie. But I love the don't overestimate what you can do in a year, underestimate. Oh man, like I see that in our capital budget, like the profile, like to a T. So I see, I think, people start talking about inflation, they start talking about supply chain, all my project managers get real nervous, and like stuff starts getting pushed out before it's gotten pushed out by the market, and everyone in all of their individual projects will get nervous and try to put contingency in there. We'll try to move it out and stuff. And so, what I and my group have to like bang the drum of is like, we have 800 plus projects in this budget of over $1 billion for 5 years. If you all squirrel away a little money, that's like a whole set of projects we don't get to do, right? And we consistently run into issues where the schedule takes longer anyway. So it's an overestimation in your first year, right? And your fear gets pushed out. And so I just tell them, I'm like, don't stop until they make you stop. Like, just go. And like the inflation, and the other thing about having a larger budget and so many projects is that maybe one project is going to come, way over, but we'll have a delay or we'll have an underage on something else. And so it kind of all comes out in the wash for us. And so as an organization, we really try to manage those risks as a whole portfolio instead of putting it down on the individual projects, because we find it slows everything.
Awesome. So we have about 4 minutes. So let's go down the line. I think this question is more around partnership. We've heard a lot that definitely communicate with your partners, utilize your partners, because that's really going to help your capital programs, especially with having fewer resources. So I'll kick it over to Mike, since he's the big bucks guy over here. How are you collaborating with your partners?
Yeah, closely. So whether it's another city department, whether it's another agency, whether it's a community, you have to be coordinating and seeing where you have common interest, where you have potentially conflicts, in the case of utilities, like in the right of way, and you got to work through those, and you got to take the time. I would say the bulk of my time and my team's time is spent on trying to do that coordination and partner. and see where you can get some things done together, but also work through any of those conflicts or issues that you have. And getting back to the community, one point I definitely want to make is it's really benefited us to bring them along in the realities, what we call the realities of implementation. So the more, again, when you look at funding constraints, when you look at you may not have enough to get done, what you wanted to get done initially, talking about all the challenges that you may see early and often. We started that early when we started to develop the program about all the different types of challenges. We talk about utilities, right-of-way, acquisition, et cetera. That only helps you on the back end when you aren't able to get as much done as you thought you were going to get done because you hit some of these issues. And so I think being really communicative about that too, not just coordinating with your partners, but also communicating well to your leadership in the community is just invaluable as you get through a program.
All right. And Tamika, I'm just going to go down the line now.
I always say rapport counts, right? What the relationships you build today are the relationships that create the pathway that you'll rely on, right? I also want to say, like, I echo what you're saying about like collaboration, right? But I think also oftentimes we think outward, so we're thinking about the customer, the consumer, the constituent. But everything you think about them, think about internal too. So if you're going to have a town hall for your constituents, have a town hall for your leadership, have a town hall for your operations managers, have a town hall for your executive assistants, right? Because they know a lot, right? Like have those town halls internally. I won't waste time on that, too much time on that. But I think like everything you think out, think into. And rapport counts, like it counts. Have a 5-minute conversation with somebody. Ask them about their dog. Ask them about their cat. Like those things count. They remember you. Those things count. It counts.
Well said. I think for, communication important, collaboration important. I think relationships are incredibly important. I'm an engineer by trade, and so I'll always say that, going and talking to line staff that are working at the treatment plants or doing pipeline, you're lucky that you get to be closer to them than I am. And going into the field and checking and, talking to what's happening and seeing what's happening out there, I often see that, the silo of management is happening and it's not feeding back to the field, and that those real life concerns of inflation and risks and stuff is happening down there. And so to keep the, both create an organization where your, lower level people feel that they can speak freely and, are safe, that's a big thing for all of us. And then to make sure that communication line is open.
Yeah, and echoing everything that they said, they took all my answers. One of the things that you need to make sure is you have a clear vision about where you want to end up with something, and that you're communicating that. Because like we've said, the inflation, the supply chain issues, all the things that we're dealing with cause chaos. And that's within your team, that's within the public, that's on all fronts. And if you're able to stand up and say at a town hall or in an email newsletter, hey, we understand what's going on and there's a lot of confusion, but here's where we're headed and here's the steps we're taking to get there, and we may have some bumps along the way. You need to be real. That goes a million miles when you do hit the bumps, when the public does get on Facebook and next door, because that always happens. But you need to be upfront with them and just say, hey, we're all in this together. We're headed a direction.
Okay, well, that is time. I'm glad I didn't see anyone fall asleep. Thank you very much. I know this information was extremely useful, but have a great rest of the day and enjoy the rest of the conference.